Welcome to our Sunday services at First Unitarian Church of St. Louis. Hello, my name is Tom Finan and my pronouns are he, him. I'm glad you could join us this morning. I want to welcome any visitors or newcomers. If you're new to our congregation, be sure and fill out the newcomer form found in the live stream description or downstairs in the lobby. Be sure to join us after the service for coffee hour in the fellowship hall. We especially want to welcome any families with children. You can connect with our Director of Religious Education, Danielle Kazemchek, after the service. We're happy you're here today. If you are attending online, you can connect with each other in the chat, and don't forget the link for the virtual coffee hour can be found in your weekly e-news. We encourage you to take a moment now to send your joys and concerns. The limits of technology mean that no matter how many times we refresh the response page, we inevitably miss those submissions sent later in the service. You can access the online Joys and Concerns form via the link available in your order of service in the live stream description, or with QR codes in your pew, or just aim your smartphone cameras at the screen in the sanctuary. I have a few announcements this morning. The auction has been moved from November 12th to February the 4th. Block the date on your calendar and keep working on items and events to donate. We need everyone to make this event a success. Next Sunday, November 6th, Reverend Kim is offering a 3-hour workshop on making meaning after disaster. This workshop honors the theological questions that emerge after tragedy, providing a space for Unitarian Universalist adults to grapple with meaning and thus develop their ever-evolving faith. RSVP online using the QR link in the e-news or the QR code on the screen now. Next Sunday is also a Remembrance Sunday, when we mark the many traditions of this time with a service honoring those who have died. Submit names of loved ones who have passed away to Reverend Kim at Sunday service at firstUUStLouis.org. Welcome to this religious community where we affirm the dignity and freedom of all who enter. Here we seek to live together in relationship and respect so that we may embrace and celebrate our differences. Our religious values invite us to a shared journey of truth and meaning. Sincerity and connection guide our religious community and call us into deeper association with ourselves and our world. Welcome. We're glad you're a part of our community this morning. Now, please enjoy our prelude Toccata in D minor by J.S. Bach, performed by our music director, Earl Naylor.
Happy New Year. Well, more about that later. I am Pamela Geppert, she, her, and I serve this congregation as chair of the worship committee. The theme for the month of October is awe. Today, we approach some ancient traditions that focus on the connection between living and dead and the liminal spaces between. We begin with words from Reverend Matthew Johnson. For 5,000 years or more than 15,000 generations, human beings have been invoking spiritual power. My predecessors and yours have gathered together to make sense of their lives and their place in the cosmos. And they have spoken aloud and invited what they conceived as sacred and powerful to be with them. They called upon the spirits of air and earth, fire and water. They called the deer and the bear. They asked for the raven to protect them. They pleaded for the heroes of old to slay the monsters of their fears. They sang songs they learned from their grandparents and moved in the appointed ways, or in the ways that were new but felt like the right thing to do. And they imputed power to these spirits and to the memories of those heroes. They called them gods, and they were invoked, Vishnu and Kali, Elohim, Odin, and 100 million others, every group of people everywhere. They gathered to make sense of their lives and to make sense of their place in the cosmos, and they called these spirits to be present to them, and so do we. We gather to make sense of ourselves and this universe in which we live as best as we are able. And we call ourselves to worship together, and we invoke the power and wonder of life itself, which all those spirits of animals and memories of heroes pointed the way. We invoke that power, which is, we know, always around, always with us, but which we sometimes forget about. We forget that we are part of the whole of creation. We forget that we are stardust. We forget that we are capable of miracles, first among them, that we can love. We forget these things. So we invoke the power of existence so that we can remember, so we can lift our eyes and open our ears to the true and the beautiful. For 5,000 years or more, we have done this. In many tongues, in many ways, we have done this. And so we continue that ancient tradition in our way, in our time. And so let us now worship together. Now, please rise as you are willing and able, and join in singing our hymn of the month, number 34, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire.
This morning's chalice lighting words come from Reverend Julianne Lepp. We seek our place in the world and the answers to our heart's deep questions. As we seek, may our hearts be open to unexpected answers. May the light of our chalice remind us that this is a community of warmth, of wisdom, and welcoming of multiple truths.
This morning, our RE students are preparing to join us toward the end of the service. So instead of a story for all ages, I'm going to share a poem. Now, the printed order of service states that there will be an Edgar Allan Poe poem. No, it was not The Raven. However, it was a tad long, and I was worried about the time. This poem can be found on the Poetry Foundation website, and I recommend that website and the Poetry Out Loud website to any of you who are poetry lovers. The author is Annie Finch. Samhain, the Celtic Halloween. In the season, leaves should love, since it gives them leave to move through the wind towards the ground they were watching while they hung. Legend says there is a seam stitching darkness like a mane. Now, when dying grasses veil earth from the sky in one last pale wave, as autumn dies to bring winter back, and then the spring, we who die ourselves can peel back another kind of veil that hangs among us like thick smoke. Tonight, at last, I feel it shake. I feel the nights stretching away, thousands long behind the days, till they reach the darkness where all of me is ancestor. I move my hand and feel a touch move with me, and when I brush my own mind across another, I am with my mother's mother. Sure as footsteps in my waiting self, I find her, and she brings arms that carry answers for me, intimate, awaiting bounty. Carry me. She leaves this trail through the shudder of the veil and leaves, like amber where she stays, a gift for her perpetual gaze. We hold one another through the awesome and awful times in life. Now is the time in our service when we connect with one another by sharing our joys and concerns. Our hearts are with Kathy Rausch as she grieves the death of her partner, Bob Pierce. Last spring, Reverend Kim started a candle lighting ritual in response to mass shootings. There have been so many since then. The Gun Violence Archive provides free online public access to accurate information about gun-related violence in the United States. In October, alone, there have been 51 incidents of mass shootings in the U.S. 5 since, since the school shooting in St. Louis on October 24th. We grieve the deaths of a student and teacher this week. Sorry. Here in St. Louis, as a result of the nation's most recent school shooting. I should have some water. Ah, there is water. Monday was the nation's 40th mass school shooting of 2022 as we wrestle with sorrow, rage, and frustration. We pause to remember the lives of those lost to gun violence. I invite you to read the names of the Central Visual and Performing Arts shooting victims aloud with me, while Tom lights 2 candles for the victims and 1 more for the shooter. Jean Kuska. Alexandria Bell. I will now read the joys and concerns that have been submitted as soon as I get there. Okay. Concerns. We are concerned for a dear friend whose heart is failing. Concerned for increased violence and hostility for those left suffering with the aftermath of violence. We hold these concerns, named and unnamed, with tenderness and compassion. May they be lighter because they are shared. As a community, we also share our joys with one another. Here we go. There's joy in that my shunt is turning 60 this month. A thrill whacking me from an unseeable direction for much needed rain. We hold these joys, named and unnamed, with gladness and celebration. May they be magnified because they are shared. Recognizing the joys and concerns that remain unspoken in our hearts and minds, please join me in a prayer and mindful attention. These words come from the Reverend Ken Sawyer. Spirit of life and love within and among us. To the blessings of this season, may our senses be alert and our hearts take heed, for in a busy and sometimes tragic world, beauty is often the comfort most sure. To the blessings of warm, accepting human relationship, may our hearts be open and our minds take heed. For in a lonely and sometimes frightening world, friendship is often the support that upholds us. To the blessings of high ideals and noble aspirations, may our minds be open and our hands take heed. For in a troubled and sometimes dangerous world, justice is often the hope that sustains us. Forgiving each other and ourselves for all we do not sense, for the love we do not share, for the acts of justice we avoid. Let's treasure the parts of ourselves that do respond. Blessed be the life that comforts, sustains, and upholds us. and blessed be we who do now and then awaken to its grace.
At a certain point on life's highway, we round a bend and realize that there are far fewer miles ahead of us than behind. The pavement's running out, fast. It's okay not knowing what's beyond that turn, bliss, oblivion, or something else entirely. But as we drive on toward that veiled precipice, it is reassuring to have good people riding shotgun with us. One of those people for me is my lifelong friend, JC. To be clear, since I just met him last year, JC is not a lifelong friend in my past life, but rather in whatever life I have left. Shortly after I was introduced to him at his home in Denver, he said to me, "I'll never be your friend because you'll just mess it up, because I just mess it up," but he didn't say mess. Let's just say that his proclamation didn't stick. I guess that being a friend for life at this point, he's 76 and I'm 70, isn't that much of a commitment. Last month, JC came to the area for a memorial service for his mom. He was going to spend time with his brother, and his wife Jan was going to hang with Pam. But JC's brother died a week before the service, so Jan and JC both stayed with us, and I got to spend a day with JC. At one point, after doing a red bus tour that went from Tongue Tacos in Fairmont City to Espresso on the Hill and points between, we found ourselves at my kitchen table. After some jawing, we began pulling up songs on YouTube that were themed around reaching the end of the road. JC, an unreformed, impenitent hippie forever, found some classic rock tunes. I played the Austin Lounge Lizards song, "Can I Have All Your Stuff When You Die?" Then I Googled the YouTube of Randy Newman's Losing You from his Harps and Angels album. The video included Newman giving the backstory of the song. While Losing You sounds like an ode to lost love, the actual inspiration came from the parents of a young man who had died. Newman's brother, an oncologist, had been treating the 23-year-old for terminal brain cancer. When their son died, the parents told the doctor that the family had been able to get past losing family members in the Holocaust. But, they said, we don't have enough time to get over this. Newman's lyrics state the pain of the loss of those felt left behind. He sings, "When you're young and there's time, you forget the past. You don't think that you will, but you do. But I know I don't have time enough to ever get over losing you." While he was staying with us, JC was reading a novel that he said he really liked. Even though the title, "Every Cloak Rolled in Blood," was a little off-putting, I ordered a copy. The author, James Lee Burke, is a mystery writer who lives and sets his books in Montana. He's a Guggenheim Fellow whose writing was compared by the New York Times to Sartre, Hemingway, and Thomas Hardy. As the narrator, an aging novelist communicates with his recently deceased daughter. The novel treads the trail between the living and the dead. It addresses past wrongs done to indigenous people and presents a structure in which good and evil battle on a field that crosses time and mortal and immortal planes. At one point, the narrator states, "I cannot envision eternity or infinity. I cannot understand the concept of endlessness. Nor can I understand how a primeval swamp can produce life forms that can plan their own evolution and become sentient and functioning creatures with eyes and neurological systems and the ability to survive on a planet that had not cooled and whose skies were streaked with smoke from volcanoes as numerous as anthills. And for those reasons, I try not to discount or reject possibilities of any kind, including the possibilities that unseen entities exist just beyond our fingertips." At the end of the book, Burke concludes, "In my time on earth, I've learned nothing. The mystery of creation and its beginning and remain a mystery. I believe that the great sin is to depart the world without discovering the raison d'etre for one's existence. I personally don't have any expectation of discovering that reason, but I do intend to follow the road to its end, and I plan to bring company."
The First Unitarian Church of St. Louis strives to be a welcoming congregation, inspiring lives of loving kindness and integrity by nurturing spirituality, building community, and advancing justice. Your support of this congregation furthers our mission and ministry in St. Louis and beyond. This morning's offering will now be received.
Our reading is The Larger Circle by Wendell Berry. We clasp the hands of those who go before us and the hands of those who come after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms and the larger circle of lovers whose hands are joined in a dance, and the larger circle of all creatures passing in and out of life who also move in a dance, to a music so subtle and so vast that no ear hears it except in fragments.
Down one of the many rabbit holes I followed doing research for this sermon talk conversation, I came across Plutchik's Wheel of Emotions. Now, please, raise your hand if you are familiar with this. Me neither. I wasn't at the time anyway, but it basically outlines 8 main emotions and then shows how these emotions combine to form other emotions. So the emotions of surprise and fear lead to awe. Now this is backed up by the Cambridge Dictionary definition: a feeling of great respect, sometimes mixed with fear or surprise. So imagine the back doors to the sanctuary swing open and the Frankenstein monster crosses the threshold. Like, my first reaction would be to be surprised, and then perhaps a heavy dose of fear. But then, what is this amazing being doing in our presence? Awe. Then what's next? Well, obviously, this is a UU congregation. We would get them a name tag and invite them down to Fellowship Hall for donuts and coffee after the service, which, by the way, today is about this particular time of year, how awe, surprise, and fear relate to the liminal space between here, the physical world, and there, the unknown, after death. As a retired school librarian, I have a bit of a crush on reference books and research and that, the thesaurus, dictionaries, almanacs, you name it. Now, I had a chance to use a few resources. But first, I'm going to ask you to take part in a totally unscientific survey. This data will be as ephemeral as a shadow. It won't be counted or recorded or shown on screen as a word cloud. It will just inform me in this moment for this conversation. To be accurate, okay, if you give a verbal response, that will be somewhere in the ether for eternity, I imagine. But, okay. So first, and this is not a trick question, just with a show of hands, how many of you could, in under 25 words, explain what a ghost is? Okay, I'll give you a chance. Explain, okay. I'll give a definition of ghost is basically what I'm asking. Okay, we have a few people who could give a definition. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary says, the soul of a dead person believed to be an inhabitant of the unseen world or to appear in the living in bodily likeness. That's actually 24 words. Okay. Now to the thesaurus, or as Miss Barton's second grade class always corrected me, the saurus. The entire year, they wouldn't let me say it. Ghosts, spirits, specters, shades. Okay, I've already given you a few synonyms for ghost. Can anyone give me another one? Just call it out. Apparition. Ancestor. A little. Haunting. There's various versions of that in the thesaurus. Haunt, haint, haunting, etc. Hant, and a hant in there somewhere, I don't know. Ah, Casper, thank you. Anybody else? We've got, so there's wraiths, and sometimes they go into the form of demons and that type of thing, but I'm just thinking about mainly the ghost part of it. So we have a handle, there are many words, and in many languages, that talk about ghosts. Now some research. I love research. Okay. According to an October 11th, 2022 article in Discover magazine, belief in Orthodox religions is on the decline, but beliefs in the supernatural are as popular as ever. More than 4 out of 10 Americans believe that ghosts or demons exist, according to a 2019 poll by YouGov. And over a third say they have felt the presence of a ghost or spirit. Such beliefs are equally popular in Britain, where, I've just found, people are more likely to believe in ghosts than a divine creator. I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, having heard this, you may be curious, at least I'm always curious, to know how this group here and now thinks. I have 3 statements. Would you please raise your hand if you agree with the statement? Statement 1, it is possible that ghosts exist. Statement 2, it is likely that ghosts exist. Okay, a few more. Ghosts do exist. Well, I don't blame you, I'm not quite sure whether I would raise my hand either. In our culture that we're discouraged from publicly talking about that, but even so, all right. So there is a possibility. Most people in this room, in the here, in the now, in this very ephemeral survey, think that it's possible. One more statement, and then we'll travel beyond. It is possible that spirits can interact with people in the physical world. It's possible. Okay. Now that I have a little glimpse into the here and now, I'm going to travel to some spaces between here and there. 3 days in autumn, October 31st, November 1st, and November 2nd, have long been associated with not just ghosts, but all those who have died and the ability of ghosts, spirits, souls to step over the threshold between the living and the dead. October 31st is Halloween, originally All Hallows Eve. Samhain, part of the Gaelic and Celtic tradition, starts at sunset on October 31st and ends at sunset November 1st, and is considered to be New Year's Day. I said I'd get back to that. All Saints' Day is November 1st and a holy day of obligation in the Roman Catholic faith. Dia de los Muertos runs from November 1st to November 2nd, and All Souls' Day is observed November 2nd in the Christian tradition. Many cultures honor the dead, and quite a few believe that the dead are present in unseen spaces near us. That could be a very fruitful research topic. Purgatory, limbo, the Bardo, Ghost Month, ancestor worship. But not right now. That would make a really long sermon. In the Northern Hemisphere, we are in the season of autumn, so this time of year brings an end to the growing season, and it becomes that liminal space between alive and dead. This transition holds much power, and the veil is indeed thin. I'm going to start with Dia de los Muertos because in recent years it has become better known to those of us in the more northern parts of North America. I am in no way an expert. In fact, my children kept telling me how to pronounce it all last night. Okay. I'm not going to talk at length about Dia de los Muertos because I lack the research to honor it properly, but perhaps in the future. In what is now Mexico, which some of you remember is part of North America, an Aztec ritual known as Miki Oit was an honoring of the dead, but it was also the time for harvesting. It was this moment for recognizing a seasonal change from light to dark as we're transforming into the fall. Dia de los Muertos grew from this, and when the Spanish arrived, All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day were used to add the Christian tradition. People mark a time when the dead freely pass between here and there. Next is All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day. Although I am actually quite familiar with both of these, neither of these has a big emphasis on moving back and forth between here and there. The Christian tradition of honoring martyrs and saints as well was declaring a special day for each saint started in the 4th century AD, but the tradition of remembering all martyrs began in 609 AD after the declaration of Pope Boniface IV. In the beginning, the Feast of All Martyrs was observed on May 13th, but Pope Gregory IV decided to include all the saints in the feast day, calling it Feast of All Saints, and moving the date to November 1st in 837 AD, not coincidentally because it coincides with Samhain. All Souls' Day is commemorated on November 2nd. On this day, Anglo-Catholic and Roman Catholic churches pay homage to the people who have left the earth. They offer prayers to the souls who are still in purgatory. Now, the idea for the souls dwelling in purgatory came from the idea that sins committed when the person was still living were not cleansed by the soul leaving the physical body. Through personal sacrifices and prayers, the persons related to the dead have the chance to aid the soul to attain happiness in eternity. Okay. Somehow or other, it has disappeared from the ether. I'm wondering if a ghost is playing a trick on me. Okay. All right. Belt and suspenders. Okay. I will find it. Oh. It seems to have completely disappeared. Okay. Oh, so I'm not quite sure. Honestly, it's totally gone.
Yeah, it's going here.
Gone from there too?
Yeah.
Okay. Give me a moment. Because I have it. There we go. All right. And now, because I'm reading it off of here, I'm taking off these glasses. But tomorrow is Halloween, and I have been fascinated by Halloween since I was a child. Perhaps because my birthday was yesterday, and I could pretend that all those Halloween parties were my birthday celebration. So, in November-December 2016 issue of the periodical Archaeology, Aaron Mullally writes, "Modern Halloween is a combination of Samhain traditions, many brought to the United States by early Irish and Scottish immigrants, and end-of-harvest practices brought by other European immigrants with the Christians' All Saints' Day superimposed upon it. But Samhain may be its closest ancient relative. The spooky stuff that we associate with Halloween, such as ghosts, the dead entering our world, and communing with spirits, can be traced to Samhain, which centuries of Christian tradition never completely managed to stamp out. According to Irish mythology," stop it, just go away. Come on, come on. Okay. It wants me to type something, so I don't want to. Okay. There we go. Ha ha. Hope I can get this done before those children get here and want to do their trick-or-treating. Is this what they call the ghost in the machine? No, not really, but. Okay. Some spirits were considered friendly, while others were not, and the Celts created ways to appease them. Food or sacrificial offerings were left outside homes. And in another tradition, revelers visited homes in costumes or disguises and recited poems or verses, all origins of trick-or-treating. Likewise, Celtic Druids offered prophecies on Samhain, not dissimilar to ghost stories told today. Now, I'd like to suggest that we need Halloween. We need Halloween and Dia de los Muertos because they ritualize our fears, mainly of death. Our Halloween rituals turn our fears into play and help us accept and respond to the unknown. Now, what does this mean for UUs? I'm going to borrow heavily from a sermon by Deanna Lack, who describes herself as poet, Unitarian Universalist lay minister, activist, and dreamer being dreamed. The sermon was posted in 2019 and is entitled Samhain as Liminal Space. She says, "This year, I want to expand a little on the meaning of Samhain or Halloween in a way that could apply to our lives, not as a holiday or pagan observation, or even necessarily a time to honor our dead. Samhain is often described as a liminal time or liminal space. In anthropology, the term is defined like this: the quality of ambiguity or disorientation that occurs in the middle stage of a rite of passage when participants no longer hold their pre-ritual status but have not yet begun the transition to the status they will hold when the rite is complete." This is according to Victor Turner, who studied that area in African. So liminal space is a little limbo, a pause between what has passed away and what is yet to be. How does this time of year fit that definition? This idea of thinning threshold between the world of the living and dying, that is liminal. In practice, practical and agricultural terms, we are at a transition between plenty of summer and a difficult winter, a time when we honor what is gone and think about an unknown future and how we might plan it. People at this time of year will often put on costumes and blur their identity or experiment with the idea of being someone else. That too is liminality. These portrayals sometimes represent the deepest seated fears of our species. In these liminal spaces, the moment between then and now become the past and the not yet. We are not comfortable. Franciscan friar Richard Rohr says, "It is when you have left the tried and true, but have not yet been able to replace it with anything else. It is when you are between your old comfort zone and any possible new answer. If you are not trained in how to hold anxiety, how to live with ambiguity, how to entrust and wait, you will run anything to flee this terrible cloud of unknowing." But sometimes these moments in our lives are the defining ones. Sometimes we see with the perspective of years that we could not have become who we are now without these crises and the liminal moments that followed. The times when we did not know what was next and we had no choice but to wait and see what the universe was going to bring us. Each week we recite together our mission statement and one very important facet of its spiritual growth. It's also the third principle of Unitarian Universalist, encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. We're not talking about religious doctrine when we say that. We're not talking about learning some fact that will make us better Unitarian Universalists, and it's not some kind of mystical revelation. And it's a simple truth that if we aspire to spiritual growth, then by definition, we have to outgrow our comfort zones. You might realize that your beliefs about yourself or about how the world works are not true or not in line with the person you want to be. It's a little shocking sometimes. Well, if this isn't who I want to be, who do I want to be? What's the next step? Liminal space. And if we don't develop the capacity to, as Richard Rohr's words say, live with that ambiguity, hold that discomfort, and just sit for a time and see what develops, then we missed an opportunity. We can run back to the last phase of spiritual comfort. We have probably all done that, like toddlers exploring and suddenly realizing they're far from mom and running back. Not quite ready for the next phase. That's okay. But growth demands uncertainty sometimes. It demands anxiety. It demands letting go of what's behind. So here, in this space, this safe space with friends, we can practice sitting with ambiguity. We can practice letting go. At Samhain and Halloween, we hold sacred these in-betweens, these thresholds. We honor what has gone before and allow it to pass on. We honor those who have preceded us in crossing death's threshold and hold their memories gently and tenderly. Amen, and blessed be. And now, okay, now I'm back to the script. Okay. Please join me in our closing hymn, number 306. They're waiting out there. If you don't mind, we're going to skip the closing hymn. Today, our children and youth are celebrating Halloween. At the end of today's service, they will enter the sanctuary to show off their costumes and collect money for UNICEF. While trick-or-treating for UNICEF is a First UU tradition, things will be a little different this year because they are offering a digital donation option. Now, don't worry, if you brought change or cash, you can still put it in the box. For those who prefer to pay with a card, there will be a spooky, scannable QR code on each box so you can donate on your smartphone. UNICEF works in some of the toughest places to support and protect children by providing things like safe water, medicine, and protection. So add some meaning to your Halloweening and give generously. And you can also point your cameras right there at that code on the screen, and that will work. But I think the kids want to let you scan the boxes that they're bringing by. Our closing words come from What I Know by Reverend Kenneth Collier. I do not know where we go when we die, and I do not know what the soul is, or what death is, or when, or why. What I know is that The song once sung cannot be unsung. The life once lived cannot be unlived. And the love once loved cannot be unloved. Amen. Blessed be, and go in peace. The students will enter to trick or treat for UNICEF as soon as the prelude starts playing. Please stay and enjoy.